Congresswoman Chellie Pingree arrives back in Maine to a warm welcome just hours after helping to pass a massive overhaul of the healthcare system. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Well, it is being described as landmark legislation. Late last night, the House of Representatives narrowly passed a sweeping health care reform bill. The bill got the thumbs up, but only by the slimmest of margins, 220 to 214, as 39 Democrats and just one Republican broke with their parties. The Senate is up next, but debate on the bill is not scheduled yet, and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid says that chamber may not finish the health care issue this year. However, President Obama says those who voted in favor of the legislation last night will look back on this moment as one of their finest ever in public service.
And moments like this are why they sent us here, to finally meet the challenges that Washington has put off for decades, to make their lives better and this nation stronger, to move America forward. That's what the House did last night when it brought us closer than we have ever been to comprehensive health insurance reform in America.
Yesterday, Maine's freshman Congresswoman Chellie Pingree voted in favor of the bill. Today, she returned to Maine and was greeted by a thankful crowd at the Portland Jetport. But with a Senate version of the bill expected to be drastically different, the celebration may be short-lived. News 8's Jim Keithley reports.
Cheers at the Portland Jetport for Maine's freshman Congresswoman Chellie Pingree, up late as the House passed a landmark health care plan. The reform package would cover tens of millions of people who are currently uninsured.
Wasn't a perfect bill. All of us would have done something a little bit differently, but just to get that bill passed and to allow people to move forward, I felt like this was the vote my constituents sent me to cast.
On the floor of the House, Pingree talked about her brother, who was denied access to health coverage when he was diagnosed with malignant melanoma. He died 20 years ago.
And the idea that we've waited 20 years to fix this problem, to me says, you know, how much longer are we going to fight about this? When are we going to move forward and start telling insurance companies you can't deny people with pre-existing conditions? You can't cut off people's health insurance in the middle of their disease or illness. And you can't put a lifetime cap on people that sometimes is used up in no time.
Supporters of this health care plan held thank you signs. A little boy handed over a batch of cookies. Allison Smith worries about a future without health care reform.
I hope that, if I got hit by a bus or something, my insurance would kick in. But I know that there are plenty of people who think they're covered and then they get sick and they find out they're not.
Pingree urged her Senate colleagues to vote soon. As the Senate will now debate its version, Pingree hopes for a final bill to be delivered to the president's desk by the end of the year. The Maine Heritage Policy Center is weighing in on the House version of this bill. Martin Sheehan issued this statement: "We are confident Senators Snowe and Collins will see this plan is not a sustainable solution. Passing this enormous entitlement program carries with it a cost that goes beyond the dollars and carries over to jobs lost in Maine. It takes an enormous amount of money from the private sector and puts it into the public sector. The same plan is not going to pass the Senate."
Healthcare reform is one step closer after the House passes its version of the bill.
This is News Center at 6.
Good evening, I'm Caroline Cornish. The healthcare reform bill passed the House of Representatives late last night by a slim margin, 224 and 215 against. Both of Maine's representatives voted for the bill, and they're explaining why today. Congresswoman Chellie Pingree got a rousing welcome home from a small group of supporters at the Portland Jetport, all feeling that she just may have made the most important vote of her short House career.
It's a step in the right direction, and my hope is that we'll continue to move in that right direction, and it means that we have to continue to thank the people who are moving in the right direction and pressure the people who don't yet understand why this is so important to our country.
The bill is passed.
While Pingree was disappointed in the major concession her party made that bans women taking federal subsidies from purchasing plans that would cover abortion, she believes this bill is very good for Maine. The plan would make coverage available to thousands more Mainers and create a national public health insurance option. Those with pre-existing conditions cannot be denied insurance, and the donut hole in the Medicare prescription benefit would be closed.
It's not a perfect bill, but it does so many things that are going to help people in Maine.
But the bill barely made it through the House, partly because of almost unanimous dissent from Republicans.
I'm right behind you, Mom.
They don't like that Americans will be mandated to buy insurance, and they believe the $1.1 trillion bill is a budget buster.
How bad does it have to get before we stop the out-of-control spending?
Healthcare reform has a long way to go still. The Senate has to vote on its version of the bill, which is very different from the House version. Plus, some House Democrats, like Representative Mike Mishu, say just because he voted for the bill this time around doesn't mean he's going to vote for the final version. In a statement, Congressman Mishu writes, quote, "I remain concerned about parts of the bill that cut Medicare and Medicaid. Those cuts would unfairly impact Maine due to our unique situation as having one of the most efficient healthcare systems in the country while receiving some of the lowest reimbursement rates for services provided." He says he's hoping to work with Senator Olympia Snowe to change the bill before it comes back for a final vote. As for Pingree, she has one piece of advice for the Senate.
Get voting.
She says she's ready to get to work on a final proposal.
Well, history made overnight in Washington. And in case you missed it, here's what the House floor looked like the moment Congress passed the health care reform bill. The bill, which is well over $1 trillion and includes a public option, passed barely by a vote of 220 to 215, with even one Republican joining the yay side. Both of Maine's members of Congress voted for the bill in the early hours. Some opponents of the bill demonstrated yesterday in Augusta, but there are supporters with plenty of praise for Congresswoman Chellie Pingree, and they heaped that praise right when she got off her flight from Washington. News 13's Jim Sear was there.
They were waiting for her when she arrived at Portland Jetport, a group of supporters here to thank Congresswoman Chellie Pingree for her vote to overhaul the U.S. healthcare system. Julian Federley helped organize this.
Overwhelmingly, Americans want health insurance reform, and I think that a lot of things we saw in the bill last night reflect what people want.
Pingree says the bill, which passed by a slim margin, largely along party lines, isn't perfect, but is a step in the right direction.
I feel really good that this bill was a broad consensus of what people wanted. We made a lot of compromises in the bill to represent a whole variety of views.
She says the bill will ensure all Americans have health care coverage and will prevent insurance companies from denying coverage to those with pre-existing conditions. Among those who came to thank Pingree, a nurse from Wyndham who says she sees the need for reform every day.
I see people without insurance going to the emergency room for their health care, and I think that needs to stop.
2nd District Congressman Mike Mishu also supported the bill but voted in favor of an amendment that will prohibit federal funding for abortion, except in the cases of rape and incest. Pingree voted against that amendment, which ended up passing. Pingree says the most important thing was getting a bill passed.
We could have dawdled forever, listening to people's concerns and issues and never moved forwards.
The next stop for health care legislation, the U.S. Senate, where another tough battle is expected. In Portland, Jim Sear, News 13.
Well, one of the representatives who voted in favor of the reform bill returned to Maine on Sunday. Congresswoman Chellie Pingree arrived at the Portland Jetport to a very warm greeting. A group of supporters were there to thank her for her vote on the health care reform bill. Pingree told the crowd she was proud to be part of the historic vote that she says will eventually make sure all Americans have health insurance and will keep insurance companies from denying coverage to those with pre-existing conditions.
I feel really good that this bill was a broad consensus of what people wanted. We made a lot of compromises in the bill to represent a whole variety of views.
Pingree voted against an amendment to prohibit federal funding for abortion, except in the cases of rape and incest. Congressman Mike Mishu voted in favor of that amendment, which ended up passing. Now,